أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, tonight is our 23rd session on learning how to read the Holy Quran. And last night we began actually reading from the Quran by practicing the first surah, the first chapter of the Quran, Surah Al-Fatiha. Tonight, inshallah, we're going to practice the 112th surah of the Holy Quran, which is Surah Al-Ikhlaas. The name of the surah is Al-Ikhlaas, or it's also called Surah Qul Huwallahu Ahad, since that is the first ayah. So here we have the entire surah. It's one of the shortest surahs in the Quran, and many times we recite this Quran in our prayers, and it is one of the first surahs that we learn when we first learn how to read the Quran. Usually after Surah Al-Fatiha, we learn Surah Qul Huwallahu Ahad. And just as Surah Al-Fatiha is very important to us as Muslims, this Surah Al-Ikhlaas is also very important to us as Muslims and as believers, because this surah contains within it the summary, the condensation of Tawheed, of monotheism. It includes as a summary all of what we need to learn about the belief in God. So in these very short verses, if we ponder on it properly and we read the books of tafsir about this surah, we learn how much knowledge that this surah can give us about our most important belief, which is belief in one God. So let us go through this beautiful holy surah of the Quran. Just as we did with Surah Al-Fatiha, we will go through it syllable by syllable, phrase by phrase, and then we'll do it verse by verse. So first we'll read the surah and then we'll go into the individual parts. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. So now we're going to go over the individual verses and phrase by phrase, syllable by syllable. So just as we did with Surah Al-Fatiha, we're going to read just the read parts, and hopefully those following along with us will also read the read parts out loud with us. So here we go. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Now, as we mentioned in our previous session, when we stop on a letter, when we finish reading and we stop, if that last letter has a short vowel, like this meme here has a kasra, if it has a short vowel or if it has tanween, then we read it as if it has a sakin. So instead of saying hime, when we stop on it, we say him. We don't pronounce the kasra, we just pronounce the sound of the meme as if it has a sakin. So that's what we're going to do at the end of every one of the other verses. So let's go over this again one more time, as this is, as you know, every chapter of the Holy Quran, every surah has as its first verse, it starts with this verse, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, except the 9th surah of the Holy Quran. So here we go. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Now let's read it without the highlights. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. And a little bit faster a second time. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. MashaAllah. On to the next ayah. Qul Hu Wallahu Ahad. Again, a little bit faster this time. Qul Hu Wallahu Ahad. A point we should mention when we're reading this surah of the Quran, that we have to differentiate between the two has. Just as we did in Surah Al-Fatiha, we'd like to emphasize it here. This ha is pronounced softly, just like the H in English. We say ho. Very simple. The air just is released from the chest, from the lungs, and you say ho very easily. But this letter here, this is the hard H. Ha, ha. When we pronounce this, there has to be pressure in the throat. The throat has to get constricted so that we get that hard H sound. We press the throat a little bit. Had. We say ha, not ha. We should not say had. We should say had. So let's go over this one more time. قل قل هو والله أحد. MashaAllah. Now let's read it without the highlights. قل هو الله أحد. One more time. قل هو الله أحد. And on to the next verse. Here we're going to read this whole series all together because this lam has a shad and then the sad has a shad, so we should learn to read long sections at a time, so we'll start doing that here. Allahu Samad. Very easy. Let's do it again. Allahu Samad. One more time. Allahu Samad. And again, we read this dal with a sakin instead of the dhamma because we're stopping on it. So now let's read it without the highlights. Allahu Samad. Again. Allahu Samad. MashaAllah. Next verse, next ayah. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. Let's try it again. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. Now let's read it without the red highlights. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. One more time, a little faster. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. And this time without the arrow guiding us. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. And now for the last ayah of this surah, the last verse of this chapter. Wa lam ya kulla hu ko fo one ahad. Now we should discuss this part right here because we have not encountered this in our lessons yet, and this is something that's going to come up many times in the Holy Quran. What we have here is that one letter, this noon, has a sakin. So normally we would connect this sakin with this kaf and we would say kun. But then the next letter, the lam, has a shad. So what happens here? We know that noon connects to the letter before it and shad also connects to the letter before it. So what do we do here? So what happens in this situation? When we have a letter that has a sakin and it is immediately directly followed by a letter that has shad, then this letter that has the sakin becomes silent. Now there is a rule for this that we will learn later, hopefully when we have some sessions on a little bit more advanced tajweed, then we can explain which letters this happens to, the ya, the ra, mim, lam, wa, nun, and so on. But for now, just learn this general rule. When there's a letter that has sakin, and if the letter directly on its left, no letters between them, has a shad, then this letter with the sakin becomes silent, and we pronounce the letter with the letter with sakin becomes silent, and we pronounce the letter that has the shad. So this lam will connect with this kaf. See what happens? This noon becomes silent, and this lam gets connected with this kaf. So we say, instead of kun. See, instead of kun, we say kullahu. We skip the noon. So let's try this again. Wa lam ya kullahu kufuwan ahad. 2 more points. One, that we already went over this a few sessions ago about the shortcuts for the long vowels. So you have this ha with a dhamma on top and then a small waw after it that lets you know that you should pronounce this as hu instead of ho. And then we have here the waw that has tanween and then an alif after it. So you will see this also in many places of the Quran, where at the end of certain words, the last letter will have a tanween followed by an alif, and that alif is silent. And later on in another lesson, we learn what to do if we stop on this. That's a different discussion. But for now, just remember that this alif is silent. So you say one, and then we move on. So let's do this one more time. Wa lam ya kulla hu ko fo one ahad. And then without the red highlights, walam yakullahu kufuwan ahad. And we have here the dal with tanween, and again we pronounce that as if it has a sakin because it's the last letter. One more time, a little bit faster. Walam yakullahu kufuwan ahad. Now let us go through the whole surah itself one more time. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Qul huwallahu ahad. Allahus samad. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. Wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Sadaqallahul Aliyyul Azim. That is the end of our session for tonight.